I see the mighty Yukon Huskies might be bowl bound. I believe they're 4-5 entering a Friday night and leading the mighty Minutemen of UMass 13-10. And Duke and BC, another epic game at the bottom of the ACC standings. Although the Dukies, let's be real about this one, they're actually pretty darn good here in 2022 under Mike Elko, leading Boston College just starting the third quarter at 24-14. Welcome into the voice of college football on a Friday night. We're going to go for 90 minutes leading up to the Washington-Oregon State game. So please join us for the next 90 minutes. We're going rapid fire college football discussion, of course, preview of week 10. All right, we've got a caller on the line. Before we get to them, we will remind you that we do want to keep this going for as long as possible and at the best possible quality and efficiency, full throttle college football talk that never stops every day. And best discussion, debate, and analysis of college football, not based on me, based on you, based on your support, your contribution, everything that you do to help us keep this going. Please hit the like button. Please subscribe to our team channels. We've got 3 that are starting to creep toward 1,000. We would like them to explode and blow through the 1,000 mark. Talking about the West Virginia channel, the Georgia channel, the Penn State channels. So please subscribe there, Penn State, West Virginia, and Georgia in particular. But we've got Texas A&M and South Carolina and Tennessee and Auburn and other channels to subscribe to. So please help the effort. Grab the Amazon link in the description section of all the videos. Please grab the Amazon link. All right, let's get to it. And we will take in our next call. That would be Michigan fan Ben's here tonight.
Hey, Mark.
Come on. Good to
actually get to see that I'm an actual existing person.
Nice. Hey, it's good to see you. We got the Block M there. I'm not going to repeat what's below that. That's as far as I'm going to go. But,
so I was tonight I was planning on doing the I talked with Tim and a few of the other guys on the Discord, and we were talking about doing a watch party. And I was thinking that they were starting early, and I realized this is Mark's show. So
they're going to do a watch party for the Pac-12 game. Oh,
for
nice.
The Pac-12 game. Yeah.
Very
so
cool.
We were talking about it. So anybody that wants to get in on that, just join the Discord. It's awesome. I mean, we have so much fun. They're like almost any night there's somebody on to talk sports with. We do trivia with Tide Guy and all that. It's been a blast. But anyways, to move on, I just real quick, Mark, I thought since I got you, I might as well ask you, did you already do a prediction for this game?
I did not predict tonight's game. Do you want me to predict tonight's game? I
would
make that.
I would love to hear what you think.
Oh boy, I don't even know where they're playing the game. Let's see here. Washington. Okay, they're playing in Seattle. Man, Washington's a 4.5 point favorite. Man, I have seen each one of these teams play one game. I saw Oregon State play USC way back when. I saw Washington play Michigan State way back when. And so I know they're on the road, but I kind of like Oregon State in this one.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt myself, but I've watched a little bit of Oregon when they looked better. And now I've only seen highlights of Washington, so I was kind of thinking Oregon was gonna
Oregon State.
Yeah, Oregon State. That's what I meant.
Yes.
Oregon State. Yeah.
Don't make that mistake.
We probably got Ben or Eric out there screaming, "It's Oregon, not Oregon State."
Yes, you're going to have Eric against you. You're going to have Connor Johnson, of course, against you, our Oregon State guy, and others. Ben, of course.
Well, that's I can't wait to watch it. I'm glad I watched this game on Friday. I wish the Big Ten, and I hope like maybe when USC and UCLA move to the Big Ten, we'll get some Friday night games once in a while. Not like big games, but I wish we'd I wish they'd push some games to Friday night.
If I was a conference, I would play a Friday night game or a Thursday night game, just thinking that look at all the games on Saturday. Every game that's played is up against 8 or 10 or 12 games. I counted the number of games last weekend that were on Saturday that I could watch. The total was 33 games. And there's only really 4 noon, 3:30 prime time, late night. There's really only 4 broadcast windows. So there's roughly 8 to 9 games you have to compete with in every broadcast window. And you can feature your conference and nobody's going to want, like this Duke Boston College game. These two teams aren't very good. It's not that great of a game, but it's, hey, if you want to watch college football, you're watching this game. The other game is almost impossible to find on CBS Sportsnet. So I'm sure 80 to 90% of the college football audience is watching an ACC game right now. It's good for the conference.
Yeah, I mean, I would watch any Big Ten game on a Friday night.
Oh, I would too. When Nebraska and Rutgers played a couple weeks ago, I watched every play.
Yeah, and I'm excited about this game because this is actually an important game for the Pac. Well, kind of an important game for the Pac-12. It's for these teams, at least.
Yep.
So, but anyways, Mark, I didn't have a lot to say. I was preparing for something else. So I'm gonna get ready, and anybody who wants to join the Discord, come on, the Patreon, come on over. It'd be awesome.
How long, Ben, have you been part of Patreon?
I started it this year, I think. I started it probably a month before college football season.
Okay.
Because I drop off the map when it, I don't really pay attention much to sports in between the off season, and then I come in and then I'm watching it. I'm on. So
I'm going to have to remember. I'm going to write myself a note to say goodbye to you after the national championship game. I'm going to say I'll see you in September.
I still watch your shows and a bit. I'm going to keep the Patreon going just because the community is awesome.
That's great to hear, because I just want people to go in there, and I want feedback that it's going well, because I'm always thinking, I haven't done this in a little while, but I used to send out reminders every so often to say, hey, is there anything else we can be providing? And do you have any requests, any recommendations, any of that? So.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, the community for me is what I like. And what I like about it, I mean, I like the paywall because it keeps Rift Raft out, and it's nice,
Maybe I should move the entire operation behind the paywall.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's nice. It's it would definitely change the dynamics of some of the conversations in the chat.
Oh, okay. Tim warns me of that once in a while. He's like, "You're welcome anytime, Mark. It's your deal. You can join anytime, but maybe you shouldn't sometime."
All right, Mark. Well, you have a good night, man, and I'll just watch the rest of your show up into the game.
Thanks for being here, Ben. Appreciate it.
Bye.
It's our guy, Ben, Michigan fan Ben. Good to hear from him, as always, but good to see him tonight. Very nice. And he's joining the watch party over on Patreon. So what you do is you go to patreon.com, search MarkRogersTV. I get you the link, and I'm going to have to be watching tonight, because typically, I will admit, when you sign up, I have to send you a Discord link, and sometimes it's 3 hours later, 5 hours later, depending on, if it's the middle of the night, I'm sleeping, I'm away from email, something like that. But I'm going to be watching tonight. So for anybody that I will make sure that I am attached to my email while I'm watching the game, so I don't miss anything, and I will get your Discord link to you within minutes. So you're all set there. Okay. We will run through the schedule and talk about the big games in college football. And of course, I hope you guys know this is the place to be all day on Saturday. I'm going to provide instant analysis on a number of games and scenarios, as I typically do all day. And it's just pretty phenomenal what we've got going with all the post-game shows on the various channels, especially thinking about the primetime window. The primetime windows, I've got to say, have been fairly disappointing. Actually, the noon window has been where the best games are, but we're going to have that Georgia, Tennessee 3:30 window that goes right into Alabama, LSU, Florida, Florida State, or Miami, Florida State, and Clemson, Notre Dame. So let's look at the schedule. Let me leave the link in the comments section again so you guys can join us here. For as much as I hate wearing my glasses on these live streams, it should push me to put my contacts in, is what it should do. Anyway, here we go. All right. Air Force and Army. So think about the bonus that we get this week. This Saturday, we get the bonus of football at 11:30 in the morning Eastern time. You folks on the West Coast, pull up a chair at 8:30, or maybe you're sipping coffee on the couch, whatever you do at 8:30 in the morning, Air Force and Army. So we get a half hour of football before the rest of the football kicks in that typically comes our way at noon. And then, of course, we've got, let's look at the noon window before we take some calls here. Ohio State and Northwestern, that's the best ABC could do at noon. That's got Big Ten Network written all over it, but apparently not. ABC picked it up, Ohio State and Northwestern. Ouch. That's either going to be 52-3, or we may have some kind of monsoon there with winds all over the place, and maybe Ohio State wins that game like 20-3. All right, Texas Tech and TCU. Look out, TCU. We've been talking you up, hyping you up, talking about how you're making a push toward the playoffs and how you are better than the number 7 ranked team in the college football playoff rankings. Well, look out for Texas Tech. Upset alert on Fox, noon on Saturday. TCU, Texas Tech. All right, North Carolina, Virginia. Of course, the Tar Heels are undefeated in the ACC, headed toward the conference championship game. Tulane and Tulsa, the Green Wave, of course, vying for a New Year's 6 appearance, taking on Tulsa. That's an ESPNU game at noon. Kentucky, Missouri, Florida, Texas A&M, which looked like a pretty big matchup to start the season, more than likely, but that's the ESPN game. Florida, Texas A&M. Then we got Minnesota, Nebraska on ESPN2, Iowa, Purdue. So Big Ten fans, of course, noon is always a huge window for the Big Ten. Iowa, Purdue at noon. Maryland, Wisconsin on the Big Ten Network at noon. So that's pretty much the noon window. We can kick in the ESPN3 ACC game, Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech. So the worst of the ACC always showing up on ESPN3 at noon, or 12:30 to be more exact. All right, here's the TV schedule for noon for me. Game number 1 is TCU and Texas Tech. And then I've got a real hard time distinguishing between Florida, Texas A&M, Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa, Purdue, Maryland, Wisconsin. Whoever turns out to be playing the best football. Like if one of them races out 21-0, okay, that one gets discarded. But if we've got I'm going to be weighing those constantly for the next 3 hours and then be thinking up a narrative to be doing my instant analysis. So whatever stands out to me over the next 3 hours from noon to 3, I'll be diving into that one. All right, we'll check out the 3:30 window here in a few minutes. One Scoop John's here.
We've got some barn burners tomorrow, don't we?
I know you're saying that tongue in cheek, but you're a diehard like I am. I'm like
Well,
actually going to put those in the category of barn burners.
I just think that we need a commissioner of college football like Mark Rogers, the voice of college
Oh,
football, to help us determine, because one week we have 6 good games and I can't figure out how many TVs to use for them,
yeah.
and then one week we have well, not so much. I'm with you on Texas Tech TCU. I think that's going to be a great one, and I'm putting that the main TV. And then the backup TV is going to be Ohio State at Northwestern, which I happen to get with the Mark Rogers Amazon link. Don't forget to do that. But yeah, I'm a little, obviously I'm wondering about Maryland, Wisconsin, because obviously Wisconsin, they have an interim coach right now. I've been really impressed with Maryland at times. Obviously,
Mhm.
at Talia and what they've done with the offense the last year, especially. So I might just kind of flip through and on the laptop and stuff. But I think later in the day we get a little bit more interesting.
I am truly not joking that I am looking forward to those 3 Big 10 games. They're all like mid-tier, who's going to win. And I know Nebraska is a 16-point underdog in that Minnesota game. That has to have to do with Casey Thompson's status. Vegas has to think that he is not playing.
Yeah.
For as bad as Nebraska's been, when have they been a 16-point underdog against anyone not named Ohio State in the last 5 years?
Well, and Mickey Joseph has been doing okay.
Yeah.
He's had decent games. They've kind of broken the Scott Frost curse.
There,
And Minnesota, I think part of it's actually the Minnesota side. They went 30. They beat Rutgers 31-0, didn't they?
yeah.
So they have the quarterback OC reunion from 19. They're looking good ish. I mean, as good as Minnesota's been in 3 years. So I could see it. But I agree. I think it would be a little closer, but maybe that's a good one to bet on. Who knows?
Well, again, if I knew that Casey Thompson was playing and Nebraska's at home,
Oh yeah,
I'm going that route.
absolutely.
But for me, I like about 5 games at noon. I know that they're not outstanding games, but I think they're competitive games.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how, and I probably also want to check out A&M, just because I really want to see, can they bounce back. They're at their house against a Florida team that's had some struggles this year. Jimbo's got to save his job. He's got to win this game.
You would think so, and they're going with that quarterback Connor Weigman, the 5-star who got his first start against Ole Miss. So it's kind of a new era for Texas A&M football.
So I've been talking about this, and I was on Golden Blue Dude also talking about this a couple days ago, because we were talking about Jimbo and the possibilities of going to West Virginia versus, what does he need to do? And the topic kept going around the offensive coordinator play calling situation, and if Jimbo Fisher would ever have the lack of ego needed to give up play calling, because it works for some, it works for Lincoln Riley, but sometimes you need to take that higher lens, right, and be that CEO. So that's what I'm kind of wondering. Like, it might be time.
To the normal person, it seems obvious. You're a big time head coach. You run this massive program. You have so many other things on your plate to deal with, obligations with alumni and media and et cetera, and overseeing a coaching staff and coordinators and support staff and making sure there's all sorts of things, that you would turn that over to somebody that could just focus on the offense and was just tunnel visioned on nothing but offense. But I guess this is true in life all over the place, that the same thing that propels people into prominent positions and catapults their career and is the plus that got them as far as they are, also is a detriment. And for college football coaches, I think many of them fall into this, where Jimbo Fisher is stubborn and believes that he is the best person to run that offense, and he's not
anymore anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also his style requires, I feel like, a star quarterback. He did his best work with Jameis Winston and a team that was pretty much all NFL talent, right? So now, granted, A&M has like 55 stars, but at the same time, you got to have that quarterback play, and he's still a newer. You said he played one game before, like as a starter. So
yeah, he started the last game.
Yeah. So I think that's a little early. So yeah, we'll see. But later in the day, also, I'm just wondering because I mean I know that our game is at 7:30.
No one's watching you play.
What's that?
No one's watching your game, John.
That's okay. Okay, but let's go to so here we go. I'm very excited about this one. Tennessee at Georgia.
Sure.
Everyone, I mean, most people will be watching that one. So this one's tough because a lot of people are saying Georgia. I know that a lot of the knuckleheads and etc. are saying Georgia, and I'm saying, you know what? Tennessee has just shown this year. I know their defense isn't the best, but look at what they've accomplished versus what they accomplished in previous years. Your callers talked about it yesterday. I feel bad I couldn't call in. I was buried in projects and everything else, but Mike Fort held the fort down, so I didn't have to.
That's what you want to call it? Sure. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. On the Michigan side, of course he did.
Yeah, he did. But
one of our favorites.
So Tennessee, yeah. So I think that Tennessee this year, he's got his system, and you look at the difference in talent when you look at Tennessee and what Heupel's done, and you look at Scott Frost and what he did at Nebraska after they both left UCF, and it's so fascinating to look at that because on the one hand, their style of offenses are not that crazy different, but at both high octane speed. But on the one hand, at Tennessee, Heupel has the talent to pull it off, whereas I don't think Frost at Nebraska was able to pull in the people to execute it.
What's interesting about sizing these two teams up is I do find a big split in college football nation between, and I'm not talking about the fan bases, I'm talking about neutral observers like yourself who are jumping on the Tennessee bandwagon because they just look so good, have better quarterback play at this point. The offense is exciting, it's efficient, it's explosive, it's everything. It's arguably the best in the nation right there with Ohio State.
Yeah.
And all of that. And even those people that dig a little bit deeper see that the defense is becoming competent.
Yeah.
And probably has actually arrived at that place of competency versus there is a faction of people that are more in the camp of, we believe the recruiting rankings and that depth, speed, defensive ability is way too much. Plus, has Tennessee ever done anything like this on the road? You could argue they went to Death Valley, but it was a sleepy noon game. It was different. And so still not believing Tennessee's arrived.
Yeah. And listen, I'm certainly not gonna, after what happened in the playoff, I'm not gonna discount what Georgia can do and what Stetson Bennett can do, because he's come into his own as a quarterback. I just think that in this situation, I think Tennessee just is able to pull it out, even though it's at Georgia, and people usually don't win at Georgia. Something tells me, I don't know. I could be very wrong. Georgia could win by 14. Who knows? But it'll be a good game to watch for sure. High octane, especially on Tennessee's side. Hendon Hooker doing what he's risen up the Heisman ranks. Just every week, he just keeps rising.
He would be my vote. And I've said that for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. For anybody who cares about such things, as John has alluded to, we posted a video with our guy Steve Merrill on Wager Talk on the Georgia and Tennessee channels. And what is interesting, he says about this game, is that if you're familiar with the terms, you got obviously the betting public, and then you got the sharp money. And those are the people that are in the know, that don't get caught up in emotions. And as you can imagine, Georgia's an 8-point favorite in this game. I didn't really think about what I would have guessed the point spread would be before I saw that, but I don't think I would have guessed 8. I might have guessed 4 or 5. So they're an 8 to 8.5 point favorite, but the betting public, he says, is overwhelmingly on Tennessee's side. And he says the sharp money is Georgia. He says the sharp money is like his computer models, like Georgia wins by 13 points.
Well, I'm definitely not betting on this game. However, I have a feeling.
Yep.
It's based on offensive statistics, but it's also based on a feeling, right? That there's both. So I will, it's at Georgia. That everybody, I mean, yes, that you would think that they would win based on all of the factors that are in their favor in this game, but Tennessee's a different team this year. So we'll see what happens. But I know you're tight on time this on this show because of the game coming up. So I'll just wrap with, I know not many people will be watching Michigan Rutgers. Michigan's actually treating it like a preseason game, according to Steve Dace. But we'll see because a couple of people are out. Jamon Green and looks like a couple other injuries. But crazy things have happened at Rutgers at night. Remember 78-0? That was at Rutgers at night. So it could go that way, or it could go 2020. Cade McNamara had to come rescue us from what would have been one of the most catastrophic defeats since App State. So
how about 42-10? How about somewhere in between?
Yeah, that'd be nice. I think on D4's show I said Michigan would not cover barely. So I think it was like 20 something points, but not as high as what the spread was. So anybody who cares about that, check out D4 Sports. We have a whole review of what just happened with Sparty, and then also the preview of Rutgers. Every week we do the show. And 2 weeks I'll be doing some stuff from the Big House.
Nice.
At the Illinois game.
Very cool. Right, John. Thanks for checking in.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Mark.
It's our guy, One Scoop John. He's going to be on the Discord with the boys tonight. You see the banner below. Go to Patreon, search MarkRogersTV, get the Discord link. We got Tide Guy here. What's going on?
Hey, how we doing, Mark?
I'm doing well. What's going on with
Tell you? What, I got a lot of problems for tomorrow.
All right.
That Tennessee Georgia game is just keeping me up because I'm tired of Georgia play them and beat them. But since we lost to Tennessee, I kind of want them to win so we can play them again in the SEC championship and beat them. So I'm really stuck on who to root for in that game.
Well, this is what I suggest. I suggest you just let them kick the game off, and I think your heart's going to take you in one direction or the other. You're just going to start naturally rooting for somebody.
Well, that's going to be hard to do, especially Tennessee. It's hard to root for Tennessee being a Bama fan.
Well, you're going to be rooting against one of them more than the other. That's what's going to happen.
That's probably true. And I know Alabama plays LSU tomorrow night. That ought to be a really good game. LSU always plays Alabama tough. Those games, a lot of people are down on LSU in that, but LSU has talent. I mean, there's a lot of stars on that roster,
Yep.
So, I mean, they are loaded with talent. They always are loaded with talent. So that should be a really good game.
I guess the first thing that comes to mind there, Tide Guy, is that Jaden Daniels on occasion, and it's been true the last 2 weeks with 11 touchdowns accounted for, can be nearly as good as Bryce Young, but I don't know that he's going to be that good. He's all over the place, and Bryce Young is Bryce Young. Bryce Young is always good. I know who Bryce Young is going to be tomorrow night. I'm not convinced that Jaden Daniels is going to show up.
Right. And Alabama can always fall back on a running game.
Yeah.
I mean, it hasn't always looked the greatest this season, but we do have enough of a running game that if for some reason, Bryce Young doesn't have such a great game, we can hand the ball off and still move the ball.
Yeah, that Jahmyr Gibbs is a fun one to watch. He is a versatile player, and he can cut on a dime, and he's physical, and he's got soft hands out of the backfield, and he knows what he's doing as a pass receiver. He's just a multi-talented guy.
Yeah, I mean, Alabama, we picked up 3 really good people out of the transfer portal, and he definitely, without him this year, I think Alabama, I know we struggled in some games, but without him, I think we even struggle more. He really comes in and complements the passing game really well, running the ball. And like you said, he can come out of the backfield, catch the ball, and be gone. So, it was great that we picked him up. But I am excited also, like you said, tomorrow with the Big Ten games, there's a lot of games tomorrow that a lot of people wouldn't, really think would be interesting games to watch, but there are some really interesting games to watch that does, impact not only the playoffs, but some decent bowl games where these teams will end up going.
Yeah, and again, that's the nerd in me that gets excited about a stretch run at noon of Big Ten games of Minnesota, Nebraska, Iowa, Purdue, Maryland, Wisconsin. But I just think the Nebraska game could get out of hand because of their quarterback situation was so bad last week against Illinois that they may not be able to score. But I know that none of those teams are going anywhere. That's what it is. But, well, Purdue's still has a shot to do something. But
right.
I don't know. That's just the football guy in me that just wants to see competitive football. And those are all not great teams, but they should play close games.
Right. And that's the one cool thing about the Big Ten West. I mean, like you said, they're not great teams, but when they play each other, it is kind of competitive. It's kind of like the Big 12. I say all the time when we're on Discord, with the knuckleheads and that, I say, look at the Big 12. And a lot of people don't think I like the Big 12. I like the Big 12. But especially when Texas and Oklahoma leave, you don't have that alpha team. You're not going to have that alpha team. But you don't have the Vanderbilts and the Rutgers in the Big 12. All the teams are B to C level teams, and the worst team in the Big 12 can beat the best team in the Big 12 on the road any year. So I mean, it's a really fun conference to watch and watch them beat up each other.
Yeah, TCU is right now the front runner by far. Right. They beat West Virginia last week. If West Virginia loses to Iowa State tomorrow, which they are a touchdown underdog on the road, West Virginia is going to be in the basement. And TCU, to your point, is at the top of the conference. They played last week, and the game was 34-31 with like 40 seconds left in the game before TCU scored a meaningless tack-on touchdown. It was 34-31 with 20 seconds left in the game.
Right, and I think that's why the Big 12 does take a knock to a lot of people. Because they look at a team, well, West Virginia's in the basement, and they almost beat them. Yeah, but the basement team in the Big 12 isn't your Vanderbilt, isn't your, normal like Duke usually, or, Rutgers, stuff like that. They are decent teams. And like I say on the calls, you could probably put 6 to 8 of the Big 12 teams in the Big 10 West, and they're probably playing for the Big Ten West championship. I mean, they're just as good as any team in the Big Ten, if not a lot better than the teams in the Big Ten West.
This year.
Yeah, this year. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's the problem when all this expansion came down in the last couple of years with USC, UCLA, and, of course, Texas, Oklahoma the year before. And then the four that were added, again, those were the four that I suggested. Actually, before it happened, I posted a video, said Big 12, you should add these four. They added them. Not that they listened to me, but I'm just saying they added those four. And my first response when people asked me was, what is the Big 12 going to look like in terms of a competitive standpoint going forward? I said, well, if you're focused on the elite, if you're focused on the playoff, this really doesn't help them. But they are just going to have this really deep league of teams that are anywhere from about 15 to 40 in the country. They're just, and it's going to be really fun to watch. They're going to be really good games. But if you're hyper focused on the playoff, those aren't the teams. Unfortunately, those two teams left. Now with the new playoff, of course, they're going to get their spot. And if they can have another team emerge and play high-level football each season, then they should be able to get two spots, most likely. But that's going to be on edge every year. But they will get their one spot. But it's just, oh my goodness, can you see this, Tide Guy, where they're going to have 14 teams and they're all going to be, there's going to be some separation, but it's not going to be much. It's not going to be like the other conferences.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like a lot of people like to say, the SEC is top heavy. Our good is really good, and the Big Ten recently has kind of been top heavy because you're always looking at Ohio State, and then Michigan's turned it around, and Penn State off and on, and Michigan State off and on. But the rest of the field is kind of like the rest of the field in the SEC. And, that's where the Big Ten and the SEC are equal. Our middle is equal to the Big 12. And I think the Big 12 is by far the most competitive conference we're going to have because, like you said, you don't have those power teams just running everybody over. Every week, you don't know if you're going to win or lose.
What do you think TCU would do against Alabama's schedule this year?
Well, I mean, they are playing Texas. They play Texas this year. The problem with TCU is every week I say they're not that good. And the schedule, they're going to lose this week. They haven't really played, maybe nobody. And they're going to do what TCU does. And then every week TCU goes out there and beats whoever they play. And, I kept waiting for them to lose, and it's not happening. I mean, they're playing tough games and close games, but they're not losing. Personally, I would like to see TCU run the table. Let the Big 12 get a team in for once, besides Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Now, I do have another question for you, Mark.
Sure.
I wanted to bring this up to you. I don't mean to put you on the spot. Think about this. Every Monday night, we do Sports Jeopardy on my channel. And we got some really good Sports Jeopardy people. You know them. Tony Altmore. D4, Brandon from D4 Sports. And Joey Foster.
Of course.
They're kind of my brains. We also have Tim Prangley. And, we got a lot of smart people in there. But we chose those three. And we'd like to some night do a Sports Jeopardy college football edition.
Yep.
And have you come in and play with them. And we could even throw them on one of your channels if you want to air it, so your fans can see it too. Because I'm a small channel fan, but we thought it'd be fun one night to let Mark Rogers come in and play Joey, Tony, and Brandon, and you can show off all your sports knowledge. And Joey's going to try to reach out. I know David Smoke because Joey said David Smoke would be another really good college brain to throw in there. And so I thought maybe if you think about that, if you think that's something you'd be interested in, showing off your knowledge against them guys.
Yeah, it'd be fun. Too many people are going to expect me to win. And I may, finish fourth or fifth or who knows.
Well, like I said, I do it every Monday night on my show. And usually on my show, I don't do college football. Because you guys all know college football, so I have to throw NASCAR and soccer and golf, all those other sports in there to make it kind of fair, but I figure one night when you guys come in, we'll do nothing but college football. I'll do, break out some old questions and, bowl wins and stuff like that and see how you guys do.
Well, if you could bear to have me twice, Tide Guy, I wouldn't mind trying each way, doing the all college football show and then doing the sports show, because I used to follow all sports, but that's been a long time.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mark. Every Monday, I announce this on my show. Anytime you want to be a guest, you let me know. And if you come on, and I mean, this is the standing speech I give everybody. If you come on my show and do just the regular, if you beat my panel that night, you will receive a gift. I do give gifts to anybody who can beat my panel. So if you want to come on and beat them, you'll get a gift for coming on and beating them. But like I said, I mean, Brandon, D4 Sports, I'll tell you what, that guy has an eidetic memory. I mean, that guy can spew off facts that, I can never imagine how smart he is. So, but yeah, if you want to come on any night, you're more than welcome to come in. We do it Monday night at 10 p.m.
Okay.
Just let me know, or let Joey or somebody know you want to play that night, and I'll be happy to send you the link.
We've got our USC show at 11.
Well, if you want to come on one night, I will change the time to move it up so that way, because usually it runs about an hour and a half. So instead of at 10, I have no problem throwing it on at 9. So that way,
if you can,
yeah,
if you can,
not a problem. And if you ever get bored on a Thursday night on my channel, we play Trivial Pursuit. So if you want to test your knowledge in geography, history, stuff like that, we're on with the Discord guys. We're just, throwing around stupid knowledge. So Feel free to come on anytime.
All right. I love it.
All right, Mark. Well, I'll let you go. You have a great night. Great show as always. And everybody in the chat, if you haven't already, please sign up for Patreon. You are missing out. We do have a lot of fun.
Thanks, Tide Guy. Appreciate you being here.
Hey, have a great night.
And whomever can grab Tide Guy's channel link, please leave it in the chat as well so people can subscribe to Tide Guy. And yes, I will show up on a Monday night. We've got our USC show, but Tide Guy said he was nice enough to accommodate us. So that would be fun. We will do that. All right. Next up here, the voice of college football. Oh, man, this guy, I don't know if he's I know he's excited right now. I don't know if he's nervous. I don't know if he's the nervous type. We'll find out here in just a second, but I know he's excited. We got Connor Johnson on the line, just about a half hour. Yeah, let's see. What do we got? Oh, we are just about a half hour before kickoff here, Oregon State at Washington. Connor, what's going on?
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't know if I'm more nervous to talk to Mark Rogers or for this football game.
Come on. You've talked to me a number of times.
I'm definitely the nervous type. Which I don't know why that is, because I can't do anything about it. But, yeah, I'm a little nervous. I'm nervous for most games. But this one, hey, let me sell everybody not watching football tonight. There's a top 30 matchup going on in Seattle on the lake, 20-mile-an-hour winds, Pacific Northwest football, rainy, one of the best offenses in the country, going up against one of the best secondaries in the country, passing offenses, I should say, in Washington with Penix. And our secondary is, I would say, a top 10 unit in the country. So for anybody wanting to watch football on a Friday night, it's going to be a good one. It's the 5th and 6th best. Everybody talks about the top 4, but we have the middle of the pack is pretty strong this year. So look at that ranking number that next.
You love that, don't you?
I love that. It's been 10 years almost.
10 years. Oh,
2013 was the last time they were ranked.
But you reminded me of that, Connor. I may have given you a charity ranking. Not a charity ranking. You've earned it. You have earned that ranking. It is a good football team, no doubt. But Connor let me know this week that he was excited because the AP ranked his team. Although we know that Connor has often ripped the AP in the past, but they ranked his team this week, and we'll see how things go. And I had them very close. Well, I'm showing a lot of respect to Oregon State in both the Beavers in Washington by scheduling this show to end at kickoff, because that's how much I would like to see this game as well.
Yeah, like I said, 2 top 30 teams. I think with the CFP putting us there at 23, they're going to be very comfortable just sliding Washington into that spot if they end up winning. And maybe it'll boost us a little bit if we win. But, forecast is still, even here in Oregon, it's pretty nasty outside. So I think that hurts Penix a little bit. It hurts their passing offense. And we're going to pound the rock. I hope. Hope Brian Lindgren doesn't get too cute with it. But yeah, no, I'm excited. I typically don't like Friday Night Football, but it's a chance for the whole country to watch. And I hope. Yeah. I mean, it's late, but I'm a night owl. I would love to stay up and watch late night football if I was on the East Coast.
Heck yeah, I'll watch all of it. I'm always up late, so that's not an issue with me. I just find it interesting, as you mentioned, the weather out there, that it seems as though we've got bad weather going on all over the place. I've been talking to people down south, in the Southwest, far west, Midwest, in the last couple of days, and this is one of the few times sitting here in Ohio that we're looking at 72 degrees and partly sunny today, and there seems to be bad weather everywhere else.
Yeah, I don't know what exactly an atmospheric river is.
Whoa.
It sounds like they made that term up, but yeah, that's the literal term in the forecast. And I've seen it both ways. So the Seattle area is getting hit hard, but I've also seen that where the stadium is kind of a bit of a bubble, and it maybe won't be as bad. But I've seen 20+ mile an hour winds, and then heavy rain forecasted. So.
Atmospheric rivers are relatively long, narrow regions in the atmosphere, like rivers in the sky, that transport most of the water vapor outside of the tropics.
Yeah, isn't that awesome?
Wow.
Apparently, a lot of it is being pulled up from the ocean, so that's a lot of the reason we get all the rain out here. Obviously, it's not going to be fun. I was going to drive up. It's only about a 4-hour drive from me. But with the weather, I don't know. I like to.
Yeah.
I'll just watch it from the comfort. I haven't been to Seattle yet, though. I would say, another for people watching, Seattle, right there on the lake. This is a top 5 atmosphere in college football. I mean, you could dispute that, but like as far as the Pac-12 goes, I think it's probably the coolest setting. You guys, you get people sailgating, is what they call it, kind of like in Knoxville, where they they pull up their boats and camp out. So it's pretty cool. I don't think there's much sailgating going on today, though.
No, if they do try to sail, they're going to be sailing a bit quicker and maybe a bit more elevated than they anticipated.
Yeah.
I'll have you know, though, that Connor, you can feel good about the atmospheric rivers because they are an important source of fresh water for the West Coast.
Oh, okay. That's good. Yeah, good for California, too.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, I think speaking of West Coast, I saw on tomorrow's list of games, one that stands out to me I didn't know was playing, but BYU Boise should be a good one. Those are 2 pretty evenly matched teams, I would say. It's on FS2, which I didn't know there were 2 FSs.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I don't know if I get it. Let's try to find that one. Is that a night game?
I think I saw it was on at 7.
Yeah, 7 Eastern, FS2. Okay.
BYU's falling apart. Yeah, I'll be cheering for Boise because that's probably our best win this year. Well, our most dominant win, the Beavers, that is. We won by 17. And they've turned their season around since they promoted Dirk Cutter as their offensive coordinator now, which he was with the Falcons.
Yep.
He's a good offensive mind, and Avalos kind of promoted him, and so they've righted the ship. I'll be watching that one for sure. But I don't know. I feel myself getting nervous for this one tonight. So Bengal Branson is starting over Chance Nolan. I think the coaches, Chance Nolan is now healthy, so the coaches are kind of making a statement by throwing Branson in there. He'll probably, as long as he's just going to be a game manager. No picks, just hand the ball off Martinez, and pound the rock. I think that's how we get this win.
Did Branson get his first significant playing time in that Utah game when Nolan got hurt, threw a bunch of picks, and then that's the first time I remember hearing about him and seeing him play?
Yep. So he started the last three, half that Utah game. And the first start was that Stanford game where he played awful for 3 quarters. They did enough at the end to survive and win that one. And then he's looked pretty decent the last 2 weeks. Not doing too much. Kind of like I was listening to Dillingham's interview and why Bo Nix is so much better this year. It's just they've sat down and said, hey, Bo, you don't need to do it all. We know you're good. Just do what the defense has given you. And I think that's probably the same thing they're telling Branson.
I am scouring my cable lineup to see if I get FS2.
I think if you like, for me, I have Fox Sports, and so
I
on the app.
apparently do.
Yeah, you should get it, I think.
Fox Sports 2.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be better games on it at the same time. But
yeah, I'm going to be swayed toward that Alabama LSU game, Florida State, and then also I'm a bit confused about the Notre Dame Clemson game. They're not putting that on Peacock, are they? I saw Peacock listed. I can't imagine.
Well, NBC owns Peacock, so it's probably just streaming there, but also will be on cable. Yeah, as far as West Coast football goes, this is the best game of the weekend. So, a couple top 30 teams. People probably aren't familiar with Oregon State. Now that we got a number next to our name, I think probably more eyes will be on it. And Washington is right there, kind of the 6th best team in the Pac-12. And all the other Pac-12 teams, I was talking to Larry, anybody that's USC, Utah both have a win over the Beavers. So they obviously want us to win for the tiebreak situation. UCLA has that win over Washington. They would be cheering for them. So it has some implications. The only other one on there that I'd be interested in is maybe Wazoo, Stanford, see if Stanford can put up a fight.
So, Connor, give us your current take on the Pac-12, whether that be the race for the championship or just what stood out to you the last few weeks and going forward versus the national landscape, whatever you want to give us.
Yeah, I mean, with the national landscape, I think people are counting out the Pac-12 because they assume Oregon will be in there and they have the Georgia loss. But I think if there's going to be a bunch of one-loss champions at the end of the year, I would put a Pac-12 one-loss champion over a ACC one-loss champion and over a Big 10 one-loss champion. Or not Big 10, Big 12 one-loss champion. I think you could pencil in the SEC champ and Big 10 champ. But those other 2 spots, I think if there's 3 one-loss, I think the Pac-12 would do right to fill right in there. And I think the CFP poll is telling you that by putting Oregon State at 23. And, if Washington wins, they'll slide Washington in there. It could be 6 Pac-12 teams by the end of the year getting ranked. And so as far as the top team goes, I think the best chance, probably the best team in the Pac-12, I don't think UCLA is up with the top 4. I think Oregon State could beat UCLA. The other 3, I think, are pretty even. Utah still seems to me like they have Oregon's number, and they play November 19th is going to be crazy because it's Utah, Oregon, UCLA, USC. So they'll be playing that day kind of to decide. On the Pac-12, it was me who said, so I didn't, the caller last night about LSU, what I said was that if Jaden Daniels was still in the Pac-12, he wouldn't even be in the top half of the quarterbacks because I think I have Nix, Rising, Penix, DTR, Williams, and Delora all ahead of him. And so you'd probably be able to slot him in 7th best, like you said earlier. I
can't argue with that.
Yeah. So I think, at the very least, the Pac-12 probably has the best quarterbacks right now, which, it's the most important position in my opinion. And now Daniels, I think, is benefiting from a better team, obviously, LSU. But, I don't know if I have LSU as high as 10, but I don't know if I have them as low as 16. I just think UCLA probably should be slotted ahead of them just because LSU with 2 losses. So I still watch. I watch all the Pac-12 quarterbacks that leave the conference, and he's definitely the one doing the best. I was
Your
saying,
boy's on the screen right now.
Jaden Daniels,
Ben Goldbrinson.
Oh, there we go.
Is on the screen right now.
He's got the intangibles. He's got the strongest arm out of the QB room. Are we wearing the black pants with the white?
Oh,
tops?
I didn't notice. I did not notice.
I think we
they
are.
just cut away.
We've never done before. Oregon State tries to be like the standard uniform team because Oregon does all their flashy stuff, but enough fans are like, mix it up a little bit. So I think they're going with the off-white top with the black pants. I know you don't. I like uniforms.
No, that's okay. We get a lot of uniform people. That's fine. My son is a big uniform guy. Let me ask you this, Connor. How would a Voice of College Football Oregon State channel do?
Well, I saw another Beaver fan, Ben, I think was his name, in the chat earlier. I think it would do all right.
How many people are out there creating content on Oregon State football?
There's one other on YouTube, and it's the 247 affiliated. I think it's called Beaver Blitz. And there's a younger guy, and then this Angie Machado is the owner of it, and she hires his name is Carter something, and they didn't used to do a video podcast. Now they're doing once a week video podcast, and I would say they get somewhere. I think they just hit 1,000 subscribers, and they probably get like 200 to 500 weekly viewers.
There they are.
Yeah. They're pretty knowledgeable. I watch their stuff just because I'm a Beaver guy. But definitely, if at the very least, I would reach out to like Carter and at least try to like get him on, especially like for the Civil War week at the end of the year. Yeah, that'd be fun. But I haven't seen.
Connor, if I could clone myself about 18 times, I would be doing previews on all these teams. That's what I think about every week. How many previews I would like to do that I don't get to.
Well, we win tonight. We'll be, at least for the final week of the year. That'll be a good one. Hey, I had a question. The the Big Ten power rankings obviously blow all the other conferences out of the water, and I see you kind of experimenting with. Like last week was the SEC, this week was the ACC. I just wanted to see maybe how the Pac-12 would do. I think not as good as the Big Ten, obviously.
The power rankings.
Yeah.
Well, to tell you the truth, I'm not experimenting as much as I just run out of time. Mm-hmm. I may be devoting too much time to these team channels. They take up all my time, and I really want to produce at least one really strong video here every day. And this is my intent every week, and I never get to it. When Sunday hits after all the big Saturday games is to obviously produce my top 25, to produce preview videos on, let's say, the 3 or 4 biggest games of the year. And I would love to produce a preview of all the team channels games. And then I want to release power rankings for all the conferences. So I'm not snubbing anyone. I just release one and I just never get to the other ones.
Mm-hmm. I would just be curious to see how it would do. Like maybe you would run an experiment because you've been doing about one conference a week. And so,
yeah, 1 or 2. Yeah.
I think Pac-12 would probably be around the ACC SEC numbers.
My goal is to get all 5 of them done. So that's my goal this Sunday/Monday.
Hey, I was curious. I haven't seen Ryan Winter on here. Who's doing the Oregon stuff for you anymore?
So we did have Ryan on Wednesday night. So he did come on just a couple of days ago, and we posted those videos. we've had on Eric Scopel from Duck Territory on
Hmm.
247 Sports on a lot as well.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Yep.
Yeah. And then obviously, of
They're
course,
both
Ben.
good guys.
But yeah, I mean, so to answer your question in a roundabout way, I'm afraid the Oregon State channel wouldn't do well enough to make it worth your time, or at least even like but like a preview for like the Civil War week. Obviously, you'll attract the Oregon viewers there, but as Oregon State gets better, it's like Oregon State is a hopeful program. We've always been, and as we get better, like next year, especially with the new stadium, I think probably we'll be able to sell it out. But a lot of fans kind of come out, and I don't want to call them fair weather fans, but like it's not fun when you're losing. Like I was there, but a lot of the Corvallis area wasn't there, and then also a lot of the fans drive down from Portland for the games. A lot of our fan base is there, so I think as we get better, I think the fan base will grow, and there will be more opportunities going forward. I was curious about. Ty guy saying, look, what the Big 12 is. I wonder what the Pac-12 will be once the LA schools leave. Like, if there will be a clear front runner. Obviously, Oregon and Washington guys would say it would be them, but I could see it kind of leveling the playing field as well. The coaches out here have been some great hires. Jed Fish, I think, is a great hire for them. Arizona will be good. And I think they'll be able to kind of take some of the Southern California recruits who want to stay close. We'll see what ASU does and Colorado does with hire. But as far as the North goes, even including Wilcox and Shaw, those are all pretty good coaches. Dickard's been a great hire. This guy tonight, DeBoer, right? Kalen DeBoer?
Yes.
I mean, I'm worried about their offense, but, it's going to be windy, so maybe they don't get to pass the ball as much. So anyways, I just think the coaches out here, which is key. I wonder and I hope that these schools are going to be able to continue to pay them, because we're going to be taking less money, obviously, with the LA schools leaving. And I think the product it'll be Big 12 level product, and we'll have. That's so many years down the road. I get myself worked up over it, and I shouldn't. We got a game tonight.
Yeah, focus on the game tonight. We'll have all off season to discuss such things. And let's focus on tonight's game, because this should be a really fun one to watch. And I love nights like tonight, because I am so scattered all over the place on Saturdays trying to follow everything, that in a situation like now, I can just I'll watch the last few minutes of this Duke BC game, which I'm actually DVRing. Yes, I may torture myself with this later, but I'm certainly going to watch Washington and Oregon State. Just relax, watch the game, and take it in. Don't have to worry about trying to watch 18 other games at the same time.
Last question: where would you say this? I mean, to me, I love Thursday and Friday night games just because I crave college football. This is probably the best non-Saturday game, besides week 1 of the year so far. So anybody out there, get on ESPN2. America's team, Oregon State Beavers, are in action. I love, it's always the underdog teams, and this program has been in the dumps. So we're finally got the number next to our name, and tonight we got to prove it. So,
well, Connor, good luck tonight. It's always great to see you and hear from you. Always appreciate the support and the knowledgeable take on Oregon State football and everything else in the Pac-12 from you.
Yeah, likewise. Good seeing you.
All right, Connor. Take care. Good luck tonight. Enjoy.
Yeah. Bye.
This is what's great about college football, folks. This is what I love is, with all due respect to you, Alabama fans, Ohio State fans, Clemson fans, fill in the blank. We have an Oregon State fan here in Connor Johnson who just is so excited that his team is ranked. His team is ranked for the first time in 10 years. And he loves Oregon State football. And we've got Austin, who calls on a regular basis, he's a Louisville fan. Louisville does not contend for national championships. They do not play for ACC championships. We have a number of Wake Forest fans that join us on a regular basis. I love. We've got our guy, Michael Hogue, Purdue fan. I love these people that are diehard fans that live and die and breathe with their marginal team, with their team that they have hope will someday do something special. And for Oregon State, this is a special season. It could become more special, of course, with some more wins. But right now, it's 6-2, and it's fun. And this is what's college football, and this is what has been torn up to a certain extent by what we see with the playoff and the hyper focus on the playoff and everything directed toward the playoff. The playoff doesn't detract for me from the rest of the season. It doesn't detract from the regular season. It doesn't detract from the Poinsettia Bowl and the Liberty Bowl and the Alamo Bowl and the rest of postseason play that are just wins and losses that don't necessarily mean anything toward a championship. Doesn't detract the rest of that for me. But it's obvious that this playoff has detracted from college football for a lot of people. And all you have to do is listen to what we discuss. And I don't even lead the conversation in that direction. I leave the phone lines open to discuss anything in college football. And people want to discuss the same teams and they want to discuss the college football playoff. And I get it. That's what is most important. But I enjoyed the Oregon State, Utah State. Our guy here in the chat, Larry Pilgrim, is mentioning it here, the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl. Corey Bradett and I were talking about this the other night, and he brought up that he could see a scenario in which Iowa is going to miss postseason play. They only have 4 wins at this point. They've got to win 2 more out of 4, sitting at 4-4. And wonder how much we would have to put together. Wonder how much money we would have to put together to sponsor a bowl game here at the Voice of College Football. Could start a GoFundMe. I got to get myself in connection with somebody who could tell me and then would be able to deliver some kind of connection where we could get our name on a bowl game. Larry, that is the number that I threw out to Corey. I thought 2 million. It was kind of in the 2 million range. But if there's not a bowl game to sponsor, that might be the issue. See, we have to stand in line to probably take on a bowl game that is already a established bowl game instead of starting our own bowl game. That would cost quite a bit of money. All right. What would we call the bowl? Well, Ben, the bowl would be the Voice of College Football bowl game. That doesn't really roll off the tongue, does it? We would have to come up with something a little slicker than that. But yes, we are. My idea is totally self-serving. Yes, sorry about that, but it is self-serving. Yes, I was thinking of that because of promotion. Promotion. Yes. All right. Shoelace Sooner's here. Maybe he's got an idea. Shoelace Sooner, appreciate you being here. Tim said we need more super chats. So, and Tim is always right. If not everyone knew that already, Tim is always right. So we never argue with Tim unless it's about USC. All right, One Scoop John says the Mark Rogers Bowl, instead of Duke's Mayo being poured, the winning coach comes onto the show for an interview. That may not draw quite enough interest. I appreciate, John, the promotion there. Oh boy, Ben, look at this. Okay. The Knuckle Bowl by Voice of College Football. Well, we would have to include Knucklehead because I think something would get lost there in translation. The Knucklehead Bowl by the Voice of College Football. Yeah, something tells me that we do have time to figure this out. I don't think I'm going to be signing any contracts here in the next week. So we'll put that on the long-term, long-range agenda. That we will work that into the business plan. I will go into my Google Docs tonight and I will amend our business plan to include that. Dave says, trademark Knucklehead Sports. Knucklehead Sports. We would trademark the Knuckleheads, wouldn't we? Absolutely, Tim. So we only need 1,999,990 with 1 cent after that $9.99 coming in from Shoelace Sooner. However, YouTube gets their cut. Maybe I could contact support on YouTube and say, can you cut us a break here? We're trying to build an account for a bowl game. Searcher Green, you're going to be sued. Are you going to sue Cowherd for calling Clant the voice of college football? I've heard that. I haven't heard him say it, but I've heard it through third parties like yourself. And I guess I should get on them for that, shouldn't I? Yeah, voice of college football. I've got to find my my patent, my trademark. Larry, no, we don't need to promote YouTube anymore. I think everyone's well aware of YouTube. We don't need to promote YouTube anymore. That's not what we're pushing for there. All right. Well, it appears as though, unless somebody wants to call me, and I will drop the link in one more time here, join the show. We do have about 15 minutes until game time, and my intent was to make this a preview of the Oregon State-Washington game, kind of a pre-game show. And keep in mind that the Duke Blue Devils, who went 0-8 in the ACC last season, who went 1-9 in the ACC the previous season, are just 3 minutes away from notching an ACC win, which will lift them to 6-3. And I believe since they lost to Kansas out of conference, I believe that they would now be 4-2 in the ACC. Hell of a job by Mike Elko. Tremendous job by him. The real MVP's here. What's going on tonight?
Well, Mark, you said you needed the phone lines. You need people
Sure.
to call in, so I thought I would take the offer up and give you a call tonight. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm good.
So can I get some keys to the Oregon State-Washington game?
Well, keys to the game. We've got on the surface, a mismatch at quarterback. If we're starting there with Michael Penix, who's having an outstanding season, against Ben Gulbranson, who is not having an outstanding season and who is not even the starting quarterback normally for Oregon State. So that would point me in the direction of Oregon State needing to obviously outplay Washington in all the other facets of the game, especially since the game's on the road for them. I've seen each team play once. I saw Oregon State play that USC game at home, and they played rather well. And had they not thrown interceptions, might have won the game. And I saw Washington terrorize Michigan State. But other than that, I can't say that either one's schedule has really prompted me to clear out other games to watch them.
Okay, and you know, Mark, there are some other big games.
Real MVP, not to interrupt you, I'm sorry. It's usually those darn SEC games that get in the way.
Yeah, and I can't believe it. They might get in the way this Saturday. as well. I heard there's some decent matchups, some just matchups in the SEC that might take some precedent. So, do you have any thoughts on the two biggest games of the day? Alabama, LSU, and Tennessee, Georgia?
I said this to a previous caller that I found it interesting that when we produced our betting segment with our guy Steve Merrill, that he said that the betting public is siding toward Tennessee more than any, I don't know if he said any game this year or any significant game this year, that the betting public has come out like 75% on Tennessee's side. But what does the public typically know? Not much. The public typically gets fooled. He said the sharp money is on the Georgia side. He said that his math models that he runs like 1,000 or it might be 10,000 game simulations that he runs. And I've not checked him on this to see. I should probably, if I had somebody, some kind of intern around here, I'd have him log all the past segments to see how accurate he is, but says that Georgia is 12.5 to 13 points better.
Well, that's alarming if Georgia's 12 to 13.5 points better than Tennessee. And Tennessee's probably got, the best resume in the country?
Yeah.
That's alarming,
According
Mark.
to me, they do.
Well, we can't have this much SEC teams be dominant, Mark. We need to create a playoff, okay? And hear me out. We need a playoff that manufactures buys, okay, to give it to the other conferences. That way the SEC doesn't do as well, okay? I think that's probably what we need.
Push that through, sure.
Yeah. And I saw a question in the chat saying from Ben saying after thinking about it, do you still think LSU deserves to be 10 in the CFP? I had Kansas State at 10. So I don't know what he's getting at. Mark, what do you think about LSU 10 in the rankings?
Well, I've got LSU higher than that. So you know what I think. And I know that all sorts of people disagree with me. And that's fine. That's why we do it. But I believe that their wins are significant. And I don't believe, I would love to know how many people watched the LSU Tennessee game, because I watched it and it was a blowout. Yes, it was legitimately a blowout, and it certainly was on the scoreboard, but it took quite a while for it to be a blowout. So it wasn't as devastating as maybe people think. And yeah, I can certainly be man enough, as I often am when we run through these rankings, to say that my rankings aren't perfect and they're flawed. And I totally understand. Well, I don't understand all of them. I understand a number of the arguments against them, that they should be lower, but I don't necessarily agree just because teams have better records that they should be higher than teams that play better schedules.
Right. I know Liberty, speaking of that, Liberty plays Arkansas this week, Mark. I mean, if the records tell us anything, then Liberty's just going to destroy Arkansas.
And as far as I evaluate these teams, if Liberty is able to win that game, they are going to most likely, I got to weigh all of it out, but most likely going to skyrocket, because that will be proof. But the Liberty that I see that can, again, it's really good what they're doing with their schedule, but they're not one of the 25 best teams in America.
Yeah, I know. If they win this game, then you know what? During the expanded playoffs, they should just be put in the playoffs as a 12 seed. Because, I mean, who couldn't beat Gardner-Webb by 1 point, Mark? I mean, the national powerhouse known as Gardner-Webb, who couldn't beat them by 1 point? So.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got some other games on, Mark. What do you think the biggest upset of tomorrow will be?
Ooh, always love that one. I have yet to make my picks. I'm going to have to do that very soon. Let's look at this real quick. So let's let me just bear with me. I want to pull up the odds and go to the page that I always hit here. So let's run through the possibilities. Focusing on the better games. Let's go to, so TCU's at home. They're an 8.5-point favorite against Texas Tech. I'm just saying that this could be justification for everybody that's knocking TCU. That and obviously, even if they win that game, that's nothing great. Texas Tech's not a great football team, but it's the Big 12, and crazy things happen in the Big 12. And TCU's not a great football team, and Texas Tech was good enough to beat Texas and hang with some other really good teams like Oklahoma State. I would not be shocked if there's the unexpected upset that we get hit with on Saturday. I would like to say that LSU is going to upset Alabama. I know how good Bryce Young is. He's the same player every week, the same quarterback, and Jaden Daniels is hit or miss. And Alabama's just, LSU their secondary may be the cure for Alabama's wide receivers. But sure, LSU's at home. They're a talented team. They've got a shot, 13.5 there. What else do we have?
Mark, while you're thinking about those games, I've been reading your comments section. I'd like to give out a shout out to Tim Prangley for saying that, quote, quote, LSU would be lucky to finish in the top 5 in the pack. Shout out to that comment, Mark.
Well, they wouldn't be lucky. They would finish top 5 in the Pac-12.
Yeah, can you imagine them beating a team that beat one of the top 4 teams in the Pac-12?
Yeah, if we can stretch our minds all the way to try to envision LSU possibly beating Florida, I guess they would have a shot in that game, and maybe possibly Florida would have a shot at beating one of the top 4 teams. Yes, in the Pac-12. I don't know. If we can imagine that much, then maybe we can. Yes, LSU is one of the top 5 teams in the Pac-12. They would be. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, they would be.
I just wanted to point that out because I found that kind of amazing. Oh, LSU, he just commented LSU doesn't beat Utah in SLC. Well, I guess all the Pac-12 games for LSU is going to be on the road, Mark. They're going to get no home games in this hypothetical scenario. They're going to have to play 8 straight or 9 straight road games. And apparently that stadium, the stadium environment of the Pac-12 is just so significant that it's going to be a 12, 14-point advantage in every game. I mean, it's clearly the toughest conference to play in is the Pac-12.
I don't think that the LSU players have seen anything like it. I don't think they've ever been exposed to those kind of road atmospheres. I think they would be overwhelmed. Exactly
the point, Mark. I mean, can you imagine LSU going to the Rose Bowl, Mark, in that type of environment? I couldn't imagine it. I would be shocked. Their offensive line would probably just get dominated. Jaden Daniels would have to run around and get sacked 10 times.
I'm trying to envision LSU going to places like Stanford, where there's like 8,000 people there, and just Brian Kelly to try to convince the players that they're not at one of their practices, because there's probably more people that show up at LSU practice if they're given the availability to do so than there was a shot shown on one of the networks last week of a Stanford game this year, and it was one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen in college football.
Well, the Rose Bowl, the UCLA, they're known for their great attendance, so they might be worse than Stanford.
We're going to get all sorts of people in here, and you know what? I'm going to continue. I'm going to let all of you talk, because as soon as this game kicks off, I'm not going to be here.
That's fine. Is any of the Pac-12 people on in the back room?
Yes,
Can we bring some of them on?
talk. Tim's ready to talk. There he is. Here he goes.
Let's go, Daryl.
Hello, Tim. How are you doing this evening?
Good. I'm loving listening to you guys cherry pick the worst places. How about you have LSU or Kentucky or Alabama go play at altitude, like we do every year in the Pac-12? See, it's not all about having people in the stands. And by the way, Washington and Autzen are just as loud as anything the Big Ten or the SEC have. That's a fact. So it's not like everything is Stanford.
I know Minnesota went to altitude last year and played Colorado, and they gave up like 50 yards of total offense.
Yeah, I'm not talking about Colorado. Colorado sucks.
Well, you said altitude. That's the first name that comes to mind when I think altitude, I think.
Sure, and USC can go and blow away an SEC team if I cherry pick that as Vanderbilt. You know, I mean, we can play let's play the worst team in the conference game.
All right. Well, let's play the entire conference. The SEC is a better conference than the Pac-12.
Okay, agreed.
Then what do we? I don't know what our argument is. I do think that LSU would do quite well in the. If we believe that the SEC is better than the Pac-12, why would LSU not do well in the Pac-12 then?
Well, because this is the thing. People conflate the rest of the SEC with the top 2 or 3 teams. If you take the top 2 or 3 teams from almost any conference in most years, they're going to be able to compete. Just because we have the national championship and it's been a great run by the SEC. If you took Georgia and Alabama and stuck them in, I don't know, the American, and they had the same exact team, it doesn't mean the American's the best conference. The idea that the conference who wins the national championship instantly becomes the best conference is
not my evaluation.
Yeah, that's not my evaluation either.
Well, where would LSU fit? Okay, so let's just hypothetically, where would LSU fit in the Pac-12? You think
top 3?
You think they'd win the Pac-12?
They would be competitive. I'm not sure if they'd win it, but they'd be in the race.
Because again,
that's what I believe too.
Well, they have Jaden Daniels as their quarterback,
Sure.
and we've seen that guy in the Pac-12, and he had his moments. He flashed, but he wasn't anything special.
No,
and he's not. And he's tearing. If he's running all over the SEC, I mean, running all over the SEC with the games I'm watching. It's pretty much.
Yeah,
a
but
Jaden
you've got to
Daniels
admit that
show on
LSU's
offense.
got better players than what Jaden Daniels has. I mean, he's in a completely new system.
he's running all over the SEC for the last 2 weeks.
I've seen him moving the chains pretty much all year, Mark.
Okay.
Well, he has.
I haven't necessarily seen that, but okay.
Yeah, nobody complains that LSU has lost 2 games this season. Nobody thinks they're overranked because they've lost 2 games or anything like that. So,
who they played? Who did LSU? So they played Florida State. What do we? I mean, do we really think Florida State's that's their best team they played? And beyond that, who have they really played?
They played Florida.
Out of conference.
Well,
we keep bringing up the Florida. We keep bringing up the fact that Utah lost to Florida.
I think Florida State might be the 3rd or 4th best team that they've played thus far.
Yeah, they played Ole Miss.
No, I'm talking about out of conference. I'm not talking about conference.
Then probably Florida State.
Florida State's bad.
So
I'm looking at a situation.
Bad.
Yeah, they're 5-3, right?
Well, Mark, you were piling on with the reel about the Rose Bowl, which is UCLA has no fan base at all, and then you guys brought up Stanford, who's terrible as well. But that's not indicative of the whole conference and playing on the road in the Pac-12, like going up to Autzen, going to Corvallis,
sure,
even coming into the Coliseum now. These aren't easy places to play.
I didn't say that they were
easy. Handful of places that are difficult to play, but to act like that LSU would struggle on the road because of the difficult road environments of the Pac-12, I think is not accurate.
You're missing my point. My point was playing a solid team like Utah at altitude. That's no easy task. That's why you see their home record is insane, like 22, 23-2. over the past couple, of X amount of years. But on the road, they're like a little above 500. It's where you're playing. Great.
Okay.
You want some really loud stadiums, but you know how you shut up a loud stadium? Blow the top off in the first quarter and then watch everyone get quiet. That happens all the time.
Tim, to your point,
silence altitude.
Tim, to your point, how many of those games, and I respect Utah, I respect them as a program. I think they are a top 15 program in America, roughly something in that range. But out of that 23-2, how many of them have been quality opponents outside the Pac-12? Who's come to Utah in
That's just
that
it.
stretch?
That's just it. Big teams don't come to Utah. I'm saying if they did, then we would have a comparison. We would be able to see. I mean, let's face it, SEC teams rarely travel to the West Coast, if ever.
So if Utah,
am I wrong?
Mississippi State went to Arizona this year.
Well, congratulations on the one of the lower teams going. I'm talking about the Georgias, the Alabamas.
Whoa. Don't you think that's between the SEC standings and the Pac-12 standings? That's an even matchup.
What are you talking about?
So Mississippi State is in the bottom half of the SEC, right?
Yeah, and Arizona hadn't won a game in how long?
But they're in the bottom half, so it's not like
they had one win last year.
Yeah, but that was last year. I'm talking about this year. There's two comparable teams based on where they're at in the conference standing. In Mississippi State.
Yeah, I'm talking about the better teams in your conference actually traveling outside the South.
Okay, but do understand, Tim, that he's made the point that we've had 3 games between the SEC and the Pac-12 this year, correct? I think it's 3.
Okay.
And 2 of them have been, I would have to double check the Pac-12 standings to see that Arizona is probably 4-4 right now, probably 2-3 in the conference, something in that range.
They're in the lower half of the conference, yeah.
Yeah. So Mississippi State might be slightly higher in the SEC but they did play them out west on the road. And Mississippi State, it was a close game for a half, and then they pretty much controlled the game after that. I'm not going to say they blew them out. They beat them by like 22 points. Oregon may be the best team in the Pac-12. That remains to be seen. They're certainly one of the top 4. They played Georgia, who may turn out to be the best team in the SEC, certainly in the top 3. And we know what happened there. And then the other example is Utah, who's a top 4 team in the Pac-12, took on Florida, who is a bottom 4 team in the SEC. And sure, they played them on the road. That's a consideration, but Florida won the game.
And then do we think that sample size is big enough to make a definitive answer?
No.
I mean, our question here, why I
called
called in was
then those are all the indicators.
Why I called in was not to say, does anyone here in this conversation think I'm saying that the Pac-12 is better than the SEC? Do you guys think I'm trying to make that point?
No.
Have I attempted to make that point?
Not at all.
I was talking about, I just kind of took offense to the fact that you guys were taking chip shots at some of the weaker stadiums, rightfully so. I'm not going to stand up for how bad the attendance is at those schools, but Stanford's historically been that kind of school. They never have anyone. It's a joke is it's not an away game when you go to Stanford. They never have a crowd presence. I was saying you guys were being a little bit glib and trying to paint a picture of the Pac-12. You were by using 2 of the worst stadiums in the entire conference and saying that's what away games are in the Pac-12. And I just simply wanted to call you.
I was getting at the idea that the LSU and the SEC doesn't have tough environments, but the Pac-12 does.
Who said that?
That was the idea you were insinuating with the road games, right?
No, I was saying no. Where is USC lost this year?
On the road.
Where?
Utah.
So my point I'm trying to make to you is when you're talking about playing on the road and traveling 300 miles to another southern, how often does the SEC go up into the north? They are now. It's changing, but how often has any of the SEC teams traveled up to the Midwest to play someone, in the past during the great run of the SEC?
When they travel and they don't do good, but they get the win, you guys hammer them and saying they didn't look good enough. So there's no benefit in it, but I'm pretty sure next year Florida goes to Utah. So
Okay, again, I'm saying you guys now are actually traveling, but what's the stat, Mark? I mean, how often has Florida left the state of Florida for out of conference games?
1991.
So this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about, gaming the system and traveling. We're talking about how the Pac-12 lost. You're right. You had a team in Oregon. By the way, maybe they're one of the better teams. We don't know yet. They still haven't played Utah. They haven't played USC. You know, they
Oregon's
handled
5-0 in Pac-12 play. They've got to be one of the better teams.
They have to be one of the better teams. That was referred to as maybe the best team in the Pac-12. Sure,
Yeah, but
they
they're
might
top.
be.
They're at the very. Would you be surprised if they finished below the top 4?
No, they're top 4.
That's one of the better teams.
I believe Mark said possibly the best team is what Mark
Yeah,
said.
just like I phrased the same thing on the Georgia side. I said they're possibly the best team. That remains to be seen.
All right.
We'll start finding out tomorrow for sure. And the same thing with Oregon. I just wanted to put them in a similar category to say we still need to see the last 4 weeks of the season to see if they may either one or both be the best in the conference, or they may be second or third or fourth in that range.
Well, I'm
Right?
telling you, LSU will be lucky if they probably finish somewhere in the top 20 by the end of the year. That's one.
Which
2,
also speaks to their schedule. If that does happen, they're playing Alabama tomorrow.
Mhm.
They will be playing Alabama and Tennessee. They've played Alabama and Tennessee like in the last 5 weeks.
Well, okay.
Not a whole lot of teams are doing that, and nobody's doing it outside the SEC. Playing those caliber of teams, unless they're playing Ohio State and Michigan, you could make that argument. And yeah, that's about where that ends.
We'll see. Well, there's plenty of Pac-12 teams playing each other. There's plenty of Big Ten teams playing. I mean, I don't think the Big Ten has as many good teams in it as other conferences, but you know, the Pac-12 is not like they're Pac-12 right now has what 4 teams in the top 20 in the top 15.
Well,
So I mean,
I believe.
Well, you're using the rankings to back your point, but then on the other hand, you're dissing the LSU rank. So are some rankings legitimate?
I am.
Some aren't.
I am using the rankings because that's what everyone's using it. That's why everyone's saying that LSU is a top 10 team. We either have to use them as a top 10 team. I don't agree. You guys can disagree and not say that the 4 teams I'm talking about belong in the top 15. That's your prerogative.
No, I'm
really just looking at the fact that, again, I call for 2 reasons. One, I'm sorry, it's just a typical like national view of what the Pac-12 is. And a lot of these schools, a lot of people don't even know what it's like to play on the road in the Pac-12. It's actually a lot more difficult. The different environments, you go from the desert to the mountains, to the Pacific Northwest. There's a huge variety of weather, playing styles. And I said it before, playing in Rice Eccles or playing in Autzen or playing in Husky Stadium, these are not walks in the park. They historically have never been, and they currently aren't. So to categorize playing on the road in the Pac-12 as playing at Stanford Stadium, or characterize it as playing at what we're talking about? Oh, at the Rose Bowl with UCLA, tarping off 60,000 seats or whatever they got to do to try to get some kind of crowd in there. That's not typical of the Pac-12.
So, Tim, you would also have to. So the narrative you just portrayed makes a lot of sense. It's logical. It is the truth. However, to support it with how difficult those places are to play, we would have to look and see what non-conference opponents have gone to those stadiums over the years and how have they fared.
I would be shocked to see. Well, let me ask you a question, Mark. Has Ohio State ever traveled to Autzen?
No. Well,
yeah.
Wait a minute.
Rice Eccles?
Well, they were scheduled to go before the pandemic. They were supposed to go there to Autzen.
And to their own detriment, the Pac-12 does travel, does play against good competition, doesn't hide behind, schools like Austin P and some of the other ones I can't even name. And then it goes, well, look at their schedule. Look at what was Kentucky's non-conference schedule, Daryl? Do you know off the top of your head?
I think he's gone.
I'm just saying that, when you get 4 easy layups in your non-conference schedule, it's pretty easy. I remember, we're in the off season, before I even knew Daryl, we was talking about how, they're going to bowl games. They're always bowl eligible. In the SEC, all you have to do to be bowl eligible in the SEC is just win half of your conference games and you're bowl eligible.
Yeah, sorry.
You don't even need to do that.
That's right. You can
go 2-6.
Yeah, sorry, my bad. Sorry, 2-6. I forgot. Yeah, they only play the 8 conference games.
Yeah,
so if you go 2-6 your conference, you're bowling.
I think Florida was 2-6 last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tim, to answer your question, I'm sure this will impress you and blow you away. I'm sure. This is complete sarcasm. They played Miami of Ohio. Maybe better than the actual Miami at this point. I'm not sure. Youngstown State, and then Northern Illinois University.
And they'll play Louisville.
Yes, they will play Louisville at the end of the year.
Which is a solid team this year. But in general, you're playing a bunch of stiffs. And let's face it, South Carolina, that's not a good team. Arkansas doesn't look as great as it looked earlier on in the season. They're not world beaters anymore.
Are you saying Arkansas because of their record?
Yeah.
I'm saying Arkansas the way that I've seen them play.
So,
and how.
Tim, would you say that Oregon State's a good team?
Oregon State is a good team.
But you're saying Oregon State's a good team, but Arkansas is not a good team.
No. I said they're not world beaters. No, I didn't say Arkansas is not a good team. I said in the beginning of the season. In the beginning of the season, we were talking like Arkansas, like they were going to challenge, right? For the SEC. People were actually having that conversation.
I'd say the two teams are comparable.
Do I think they're comparable?
I think they're comparable. Arkansas and Oregon State, and truth be known, if they played, probably pick Arkansas to win.
I'm right there with you, Mark.
I'm not sure how we even make that distinction because they don't really have any common opponents and they play different styles of ball. I mean, we could guess at that, but
I know that Arkansas played a better non-conference opponent in Cincinnati, and they handled them. They didn't blow them out. It was a decent game, but they pretty much controlled the game.
Oregon State lost the game, but they nearly beat USC. Nearly. And I think that loss is a better game than beating Cincinnati by any points.
Oh, well, I was strictly going non-conference. Arkansas was within 5 points of Alabama in the fourth quarter.
Well, Alabama's been a lot of close games. Alabama's a good team, but they've been in a lot of close games.
Sure. Well, if you're not going to take an Alabama example, I don't know what I'm going to have to. They didn't play like the Buffalo Bills this year.
What I'm trying to say is some of these teams. What I'm trying to bring everyone back down to earth on is that we get this idea that nobody can play with the SEC, and we get this idea. Well, if the SEC team up against a Pac-12 team, well, the SEC team's good. Look, they've won 3 in a row off the. Everyone that watched that Florida game. Let me ask you both this question: if Utah plays Florida on a neutral field 10 times, how many times does Florida win?
Well, before I answer that question, we do understand we're just talking complete speculation.
Yeah, of course.
Versus what actually did happen. Something did happen. They did play.
Yeah.
And somebody's got to be at home and somebody's got to be on the road. That's just the way football works. Unless
Cam Rising inexplicably on second down from like the 5-yard line, threw it right to a Florida guy.
And believe me, I was upset because I picked Utah to win the game and to cover the spread.
Let's say this then. How many times out of 10 do you think that Utah and Cam Rising, how many times does Florida at the Swamp beat that Utah? If you watch that game, how many times do you think they win? Do you think they win 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10? 5. How many times does this better Florida team beat?
They probably split.
You think they'll really?
Yeah, the difference is Utah's made a decision to lose the game. It wasn't like, what was it, East Carolina versus North Carolina State, where the kicker just flat out missed it. And so Utah did something to lose the game. That has to be taken into account.
It does. It's part of football. We pick on Tim. You and I and everybody else, we pick on quarterbacks every week that say, well, he made a bad decision. He's part of the team.
No, they lost the game, Mark. I'm not saying that you have to win the game, right? You got to score that touchdown. If you throw an interception,
and I respect
the other team
what
capitalized
you're
on a
doing.
mistake.
And I respect what you're and I also, Tim, respect what you're doing, because I did the same thing after the game. I said, this game doesn't prove to me that Florida is better than Utah by any stretch.
It definitely doesn't, because again, it was on the road.
But they won the game.
No, but what it does, in my opinion, is it shows they are comparable teams. And you've got arguably a top 4 Utah team against maybe the 10th best SEC team.
Tim, you really have to go along with that. That's why they play football.
Before the game was played,
yes,
the knuckleheads were sitting there talking about that game well before it was played.
Sure.
And we said, some people even just called it, said Utah somehow is going to go into the swamp and lose that game, and the narrative the rest of the season is going to invalidate the entire conference. Well, look, our 10th, 9th, 8th best team beat your what, blah, blah, blah.
What's
First
the
off,
truth?
there's upsets every year. And as you admitted, Mark, and anyone that watches football would know that just because one team wins on one day, it does not make them a better team.
Hey, Tim, this is a perfect reason why 3 SEC teams can make the playoffs. Because you know what? Teams lose all the time, but 3 of the best 4 teams are in the SEC regardless of their record. So you know what? We should have 3 SEC teams in.
Tim, let me ask you this, and part statement, part question. Washington State beat Wisconsin, and Washington beat Michigan State. And I heard on the Pac-12 show all sorts of, big statements made because we beat the Big Ten. We beat the big bad Big Ten, these 2 games. Yes, credit to those teams. But we're not talking about lower end teams in the Pac-12 beating top-notch teams in the Big Ten. That was not an Arizona win over Penn State. That was beating Michigan State and Wisconsin, who at the time were considered top 15 teams, but all they've done is go back to the Big Ten and lose to everybody in the Big Ten too.
Well, Mark, I know you're right. First off, I don't believe we said that we beat the big bad Big Ten. We thought they were good teams because, well, you are putting words in our mouth.
Well,
we thought, I think everyone
hear that exact statement, but you guys
can I ask this question to both of you guys?
Reveling in the wins by the Pac-12 over the Big Ten, correct? Yeah,
because we were shocked
with that.
We were shocked that teams that we didn't think that by those wins, Washington State, Mark, is not thought of as a good team in the Pac-12.
They took Oregon to the wire.
Neither one of you guys. Let's be fair. You guys, we're now looking back on the whole season. You're talking about what we said right after the wins.
Sure.
Did you think that win at Cap Randall was a good win when it happened?
Absolutely.
Okay. So then let's be fair. A lot of people did. And we're like, wow, look at this Washington State team. And to be fair to Washington State, they've played solid they haven't got the wins for it, but they've played really well. They've improved a lot this year under Dickert. You can tell that actually that program's turning around.
Absolutely.
So the idea here that I'm saying that the SEC isn't as good as the Pac-12. I'm not saying that. 2, that I think that if Georgia or Alabama or possibly, and I'm going to say word possibly Tennessee, those first 2, I think they easily win the Pac-12 hands down. But I also think they win all the other conferences. So there's that. I'm not saying that the Pac-12 is superior. I called originally. It's kind of spun in some direction. I don't think that Florida's a better team, and I think time will show that Utah is a better team than Florida this year. I'm sure they'll finish way above them, They played one game and lost on the road in the first game of the season. That happens on a very sloppy play that probably doesn't happen very often. Cam Rising throwing that interception. Anyone that watched that game knew the better team on the field that day. And it wasn't
to a
Florida.
certain extent. But if they really went down there and took care of business, they would have been up by 17 points
They didn't.
in the fourth quarter.
Just like Alabama dropped the bomb and was lucky to get out of Austin with a win. I mean, things like that happen. Doesn't make Alabama worse than, if Alabama had lost by 1 point to Texas and we're still looking back on an upset, right? Do we say that Texas is the better team? So I don't know why we call
I
Florida
think a
the
lot
better
of
team.
people still think Texas is the better team, even though they lost to Bama. I mean, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but the video of your post-game analysis is Texas should have won.
Yeah.
So, and if Mark, do you think Texas outplayed Alabama and was the better team on that day?
Yes.
Hey, John, I don't care about LSU. So just settle down about being Florida State and LSU. I haven't talked about that. I really don't care.
So let me ask you this, Tim. If in a hypothetical world, you could set up every SEC team and every Pac-12 team evenly, okay,
Yeah.
1 through 14 or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and they played head-to-head, what would the record be?
Bad for the Pac-12. Obviously, let's just go off the top of our heads. Ready? So we'll have to mince some things around. But
Hey.
I don't think that USC. I don't think any of the top 4 beat Alabama. Did anyone disagree?
Well, just to be fair to the Pac-12, you would have to, with 2 more
12 on
teams,
14.
you'd have to take like the 2 middle teams, I guess, would be the most fair thing to do, would be take the 2 middle teams out of the SEC.
Yeah.
You'd have to skip like numbers 6 and 7 or 5 and 6, 6 and 7.
Well, based on what I'm looking at, that would be your options are Mississippi State, Arkansas, Kentucky, Missouri, and South Carolina at 2 and 3.
We're going down a conversation that I'm not making. Mark or Daryl, if I made the comment that I think that the Pac-12 is a better conference than the SEC, I'm saying Utah.
No, you have not.
I'm saying Utah versus Florida and saying that LSU isn't that good. That's all I'm saying. I have all the respect in the world for what Kirby Smart, what Saban have done, right? And what Heifel's doing right now. I have all the respect in the world for that. My point is that I think these Pac-12 teams at best are a year or two away, from being on a competitive level for even New York 6 bowls, right? I think that Oregon and USC and Utah can play with pretty much anyone that's not in those Ohio State, the top 4 teams currently. I don't think that USC and Oregon are taking a second seat to some of these middle teams. I really don't. And anyone below us. Let me ask you this question, Daryl. If you had to place USC in a power ranking in the SEC, where do you put them? I'm curious. I want to hear this one. And then do Oregon for me as well.
USC would be 4th. Oregon would probably be 4th as well.
Okay, where would you put UCLA this year?
Oh, 6th.
Utah?
Utah, let's see. 9th,
I mean, I know
8th.
Utah lost to them on the road, but
Yeah, I think Utah's better than South Carolina and Missouri, but I think they're about even with Mississippi State and Arkansas.
okay. So you're saying that those 4 teams are probably in the top half of the SEC, correct? Outside the top 3, which I'm not going to argue with.
Yeah, top half I think is fair. I don't think Oregon's is Texas A&M or Auburn or Arkansas. I think they're better than that.
Right.
I think there's a significant gap between Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, and the rest of the conference.
So you would put those teams above LSU, though. Is that correct?
Yeah, they currently are also above LSU. Now, if LSU goes in...
Forget the rankings. I'm just saying, in your opinion,
absolutely. But if LSU goes tomorrow and beats Alabama somehow, then that changes things.
Well, yeah, that would change things.
I highly doubt that they are even competitive against Alabama, though.
I completely agree with you on that. So, like, just to recap, I don't think the Pac-12 is better than the SEC. I don't think that any of the top 4 teams I talked about would beat Alabama or Georgia. Not even, and probably they're not going to keep it probably within 17 points of either one of those teams. Okay, I'm fully on board with all of that, but I don't think the narrative that the SEC is just head and shoulders. A year ago, yeah, the Pac-12 was trash. Look at what the Pac-12 has done in 1 year. If they, I think the Pac-12 is even better next year. And maybe you say it's going to fall back. They lose DTR, but the rest of the Pac-12, I don't think we're watching it tonight. I don't think people realize how good this Oregon State team is. I'm not sure about DeBoer. I'm kind of gone back and forth all season on what Washington's future is. But I've been high on and still will continue to be high on Jonathan Smith. As long as he didn't go to the NFL, he's an Oregon State guy. He's not going to another team. If they can keep him there, I think they could be a perennial top 25 team. They're a really solid team.
Yeah, I've said Oregon State's been underrated all year. I think they're around the top 20, fighting for a top 15 team in the country. But the reason you came in, the reason I pointed your comment is you said LSU couldn't be a top 5 Pac-12 team. I mean,
you realize you realize I was trolling you. No, but I will tell you this. I don't think they're a top. You just said it. You just said they weren't better than like basically the top 3 teams. So that puts them somewhere.
Yeah, they're 4th. They're better than, I think they're better than Utah and Oregon State.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking LSU over Oregon State and Utah.
Right, and I think LSU would probably be favored against UCLA.
Yeah, that's about where I'd put them. I would love to see a game between LSU and UCLA.
Right.
That I think would be a competitive game, a really good game.
And I would
USC and Oregon are better.
And again, I think that they're probably going to, I think Utah loses in Baton Rouge, but I don't think they lose in Salt Lake. I'm just telling you. Yeah. Anyone that's seen them play there, it's not just the altitude. Their students like the Muss is just loud, rowdy, and it's a small place, but they're right up on you. They're right up on the back of the benches. It is a nasty, rowdy place. I've heard Trojan after Trojan in interviews saying that playing at Rice Eccles is the worst stadium they've ever had to endure, ever. And so, I mean, I don't know if you had them play at Rice Eccles or if LSU has to go up to Corvallis. We're talking about a team that lost to UCLA last year. I know it was last year, and a lot of things changed in 1 year. But you guys are going to see Jaden Daniels. Watch Jaden Daniels when he's going up against linebackers with speed and talent. You're going to see a huge difference in what he can do on that field tomorrow than what he's been able to do in the past so far this season. He's going to get exposed, and it's not going to be good for LSU.
I think you're pretty much on the money there, Tim. Let me ask you, how much forward are you looking to the Las Vegas Bowl this year?
No idea who's going to be in it.
Well, it's the reason I brought it up is it's a Pac-12 team versus an SEC team.
Unfortunately, it's probably going to be some. See, here's the thing. I'll agree with this as well. Why, when you told me if we lined them up head to head, the Pac-12 versus the SEC, it's because you guys have that 3-team lead, but then our fourth. I think as we go down, I think our 4th place it just starts dropping off. Whereas the middle of your teams, I think they'll be competitive. But once we can start toward the bottom of our conference, the bottom of our conference isn't going to be as competitive as the bottom of your conference.
And if 2 teams from the SEC get into the playoff, the Pac-12 is going to have an advantage in that game.
3, Mark. 3.
The seeds are going to be slotted to where the SEC is going to have a lower seed play a higher seed in the Pac-12.
3, Mark. 3. Okay.
I don't think that Clemson loses tomorrow. I think they're probably going to be undefeated. So they'll be undefeated going in. Clearly, the winner of Ohio State, Michigan is going to be in, with the possibility of a really close loss where there might be because again, for the whole idea of having multiple SEC teams in, when that happened in the past, there wasn't much in the other conferences. It was just very drastically obvious that no one else belonged. But if you're having some solid undefeated TCU or a one-loss Oregon, granted they have that Georgia loss, or maybe a one-loss USC or a one-loss UCLA team, it's going to be kind of hard to keep, because USC's one loss is not as bad as people want to make it sound. I mean, I don't think Utah is as bad as you guys think they are. And I definitely don't think they're as bad on the road at home.
But the problem is for USC, their loss is going to, in my scenario, okay, Tennessee's loss is going to be to Alabama. Alabama's loss is going to be to Tennessee. And Tennessee's loss is going to be to Georgia. I think we can all agree those three losses are better than USC losing to Utah, even though it was at Utah.
Well, you're assuming it's a close loss. What if Tennessee loses by 14 points?
I still think the loss is better.
What if they lose by 12? Let's put the kind of not even a weird number. Let's call it 12, though. Let's say they lose by 12 points. I
think there is such a significant gap in the sport. I still think it's a better loss.
But it's not that significant. I think you're looking. You have to remember this is the whole new year.
Yeah, I think there's 5 teams that have separated themselves from the sport. The 3 SEC teams I've talked about, and Ohio State and Michigan. I think Oregon is the 6th best team in the country. I do. I think they're the 6th best team. And you saw what happened when they played one of the top 5 teams.
Here's a question for you. What if Oregon goes undefeated? Okay, your scenario plays out where you're getting 3 in.
This is going to be our last scenario, and we got to let Michael on here, and then we're going to shut down. Okay.
So here's your scenario. Let's say Oregon goes undefeated. Okay, and your scenario plays out exactly how you're talking about it. Oregon plays USC in the Pac-12 championship game and beats them by 17. Does Oregon get in?
No.
They beat SC by 17. They beat SC 11-1 SEC team, USC team by 17, and you're going to put 3 SEC schools in?
46 is a lot of points, Tim.
Huh?
How do you
46
get past
is
that?
a lot of points.
How do you get past
it? Was the first game. It was the first game of the season.
So we're not counting. So LSU didn't lose to Florida State. So please don't bring that up again.
LSU didn't lose to Florida. That's not even a conversation.
But you bring it up all the time when you talk about LSU. So don't bring that game up because they lost any.
Mark, when have I brought that game up?
It's brought up all the time when LSU's brought up.
But I haven't brought it up.
So I'm just saying, yeah, that was on a blocked PAT with like 1 second left in the game versus 49-3. How do you get past 49-3? How do you leave one team out of the playoff that beat the other team 49-3?
I'll even go this far. If
USC
goes 12-1,
we're talking about LSU being the 3rd team. Is that what we're talking about? I didn't know LSU was part of the scenario.
Talking about Georgia and Oregon.
Right.
But here's the thing: if Oregon makes the Pac-12 title game, I'm pretty sure the Pac-12 is eliminated if 3 SEC teams have 1 loss. Because if USC wins, they're going to look at, in my opinion, the committee's going to look at and say, Georgia, they beat that same team by 46 points. So how good was that team they beat in the Pac-12, or USC beat in the Pac-12 title game?
Flip it then. USC beats Oregon by 17.
Yeah, I still think they're left out. That was the point I was trying to make because of how dominant the Georgia win was.
I don't know about that. Just because.
Again, you have to give some credit then for them playing an entire season together. It's now Dan Lanning's 13th game as the head coach. The quarterback has had a whole season. The team has come together. I mean, I know you guys know football well enough to know that the way Oregon's playing now is light years ahead of where they were in their very first game. Absolutely.
But if we're going to discard games, then.
No, not discarding it. We can't do that. It's part of the season. We're not discarding it, but you have to mitigate what the circumstances are. So we can't say one game is, beating them in game 1 is the same as beating them in game 13. I'm saying you got the mitigating factors. And I'm not saying USC beats them by like 25 or 28 or 46, right? I'm saying a solid win of 17. I don't know. You got a Power 5 conference a team loses. So this is even better if it's USC's in the scenario on a 2-point conversion at the end of the game with some controversial. I mean, everything about that game is crap. Utah won, but then they go and they run this. They run the table and a Power 5 with some good teams in it, and then they win by 17 over a much improved Oregon team. I'm just trying to figure out how that would be a. Again, I don't know.
Because Tennessee in my scenario would have beaten Bama, Georgia would have beaten Tennessee, and
Hey guys,
they would have all beaten one another, and all three of those wins would be better.
we're going to hear from our guy Michael, and
All right.
And wrap it up. We'll be
Yeah.
here all night tomorrow night to do it again after we've get more games to see. So
Yeah, Mark, I know you wanted to watch the Oregon State Washington game.
Yes.
I imagine
look
that.
away from me.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
watching it right now. It's been on.
All right,
Wow.
guys.
All right. See you later, Mark.
Thanks.
See you, Daryl.
Okay, Michael.
How you
Thanks for
doing,
waiting.
sir?
You're here.
How you doing?
I'm doing just fine. What's going on tonight?
Not much. I was kind of wanting to join the conversation and stuff like
Oh,
that, but I hope,
okay.
but
Yes.
I never got a chance to. But
No.
anyway, sorry about that. But is there any chance if Daryl calls in tomorrow that we can do a two-way call like you just did with Tim? Because I am going to shoot his stuff down. There is no way, Tim. I mean, excuse me, Mark. I got a better chance of winning the Indianapolis 500 5 times in a row than the SEC getting 3 teams in to playoff this year.
All right.
And we both know.
I don't
that's not
know.
gonna happen.
I don't know if our viewers are ready to hear you and Daryl argue about 3 teams from the SEC in the playoff.
Well, maybe not, but
I understand his line of thinking. It actually makes sense depending on your perspective of who should be included in the playoff. That's what it all comes down to. The people that say there shouldn't be 3 teams in the SEC in the playoff are people like myself that want to see inclusion and representation across the map and want to see teams that earned it, specifically with conference championships, to play in the playoff. He's making the argument that the SEC is the best conference. Those are the 3 best teams. They should be in the playoff. And if nobody else has beaten those 3 teams except for them winning games against each other, then why not?
Sure, I agree with you. But see, here's the thing, though, Mark. Not all 3 of them going to have a loss. I think one of those 2 teams, either Georgia or Tennessee, is going to be unscathed in 13-0. I don't see all 3 having a loss. I really don't.
Well,
No.
Well, that's what you see, but it's very possible.
Okay,
But
let me ask you this.
What you're arguing is that you don't think it's going to happen, but you can't argue that it could possibly happen.
Okay, let me ask you this then. Say Tennessee beats Georgia tomorrow.
Yep.
And they end up going against Alabama. Everybody thinks Alabama's going to win the rematch.
Mm-hmm.
Why couldn't Tennessee win the rematch again?
Well, they could.
But everybody's thinking it's going to be a 10 to 14 point win for Alabama. I'm trying to figure out how and why.
Well, if you go through college football history, Michael, you will see. Do this sometime when you're bored. Go through college football history and look at rematches. And the thing you can trust about rematches in college football, one of the very few things that actually is valid in college football in looking at scores, is that rematches always involve, unlike the NFL, it always involves 2 teams that are very similar, because that's the reason they play again. It's because they're playing in a conference championship game or they're playing in a bowl game. Or in last season's case, for the first time, they're playing in the national championship game.
Okay.
And you will find that the loser of the first game often wins the second game. Also understand that Alabama played in one of the more difficult places to play in college football, and they lost on a last-second field goal.
Field goal, exactly.
That doesn't mean that they're going to win the rematch. You're completely correct in saying Tennessee could win the second game. Sure, they could.
No, I do gotta ask you this though, because I can't remember. But did Georgia and Alabama play the first time when they played for the national championship? Did they play during the regular season
No.
or the SEC championship? I can't remember who was in the SEC
No.
championship.
Georgia played LSU.
Was
Or
it
Auburn.
okay? Because that's
They played
year.
Auburn. 2017. They played Auburn. Georgia, Auburn.
Okay, all right, because that's right. Because Auburn beat Georgia. Auburn beat Alabama in the Iron Bowl. That's right.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering. And another thing I'm trying to figure, I think tomorrow with the weather and conditions and stuff like that, everybody's thinking, is there supposed to be weather down in both Tennessee? I know there's supposed to be weather here in West Lafayette, but is there supposed to be weather issues and also in Athens and Baton Rouge?
I don't know. Just Google Athens weather and you'll see.
I was
I
just wondering
don't
because
know.
if they're, I know there's going to be and stuff like that, and I got a feeling with Purdue tomorrow it's going to be more of they're going to get I was going to probably get a steady dose of Purdue's going to have a steady dose of running the ball and maybe doing short passes. But
Yep.
I'm not sure much about Iowa's run defense. Are they pretty decent this year, or is it
Iowa's run
so-so?
defense? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was good at everything on defense.
Okay.
Yes.
Just wondering, I didn't know if they had
their run
issues.
defense is really good. Although Michigan ran the ball on them.
Mm-hmm. Just was wondering. So I think it might be more. I think it might be 60-40 tomorrow down in Athens for Tennessee and Georgia. I think they'll run the ball a little bit more than they will pass it. We'll see. All right, I'm going to let you get to Oregon State,
Thanks,
Washington.
Michael.
I hope it's a good game.
Thanks
I
for
will
being
talk to you
patient.
tomorrow night, and hopefully
Yep.
you're welcome. And I hope it's a Boyd America win.
Yep. Enjoy the game, sir.
Thanks, Mark. Have a good one.
You too. All right, folks. Voice of College Football here. We'll be back tomorrow night after all the primetime games right here at the Voice of College Football. We appreciate all the support and all that you guys do to make this work each and every day. Again, we'll be back here at 11:30 Eastern on Saturday night after all the big games. We will be posting videos throughout the day. And, of course, join our post-game shows throughout the day on all the team channels right here at the Voice of College Football. Thanks, guys. See you tomorrow.